give him a shot to do what?
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? We're back. We're better than ever. I'm sitting with the man, the myth, the legend himself, White Sox writer, I believe Houston Rockets writer, and so many around the country. This man gets around. The man, the myth, the legend himself on War Media and so many other outlets. Gabe, how we feeling, baby?
I'm feeling excellent, man. Another day, another dollar. Always a blessing and pleasure to always be talking sports. Most importantly, hoops this time of the year. As we know, the NBA draft is only hours away, so I'm eager to see what's going on and what these teams are doing to seek to make moves. May not be a lot of franchise game changers, but it's definitely going to be some role players and guys that could possibly help some of these teams get to where they're trying to go.
For sure. And obviously, the narrative tonight is we're going to be talking Bulls basketball. That's the consensus. That's what we're getting into. But Gabe, more importantly, I want to ask you as a writer of the Houston Rockets, you know, this is a team you have followed, a franchise you have followed from the James Harden days to now. Is there, in your unbiased opinion, any validity to them tagging Kevin Durant or Jimmy Butler tonight or any other night in the near future?
Well, it's been a mighty long time since I covered the Houston Rockets, but I did cover them during the last 3 years of James Harden's tenure with the team. And I still follow the team, still know a lot of people in the city of Houston and Rockets fans. Shout out to Anthony Duncan, LaShard Binkley. Those guys do a hell of a job covering the Rockets. But when I saw that report today, I don't see it. And the reason why I don't see the Kevin Durant rumor or even the Jimmy Butler rumor coming into fruition is because I think Ime Udoka has a vision with the young guys that he has that's part of his nucleus in Houston with guys like Jalen Green and Asar Thompson, as well as Alperen Sengun, a guy that they said was rumored to be a part of that package in the event that Phoenix wanted to trade Kevin Durant to Houston. I love Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is one of the greatest scorers in the 21st century, if not the greatest scorer in the 21st century in the league outside of Kobe Bryant, you know, rest in peace. But I don't see them at this stage of his career going to Houston in the effort to try and win a championship when those guys are still trying to learn how to win. I just don't think the pages align with either KD's camp and what the Houston Rockets are trying to build with Ime Udoka and Rafael Stone over there, who I think has been doing a hell of a job of collecting young talent. And now it's time to continue to do the same thing and let these guys grow together. Because they got a nice cast, and they weren't that far away from a playing spot last season.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think mainly for me, the big one is KD and the price tag that comes with that. You know, first of all, discussing, I don't know what it is. This is not 2K by any means. Like in 2K, he doesn't develop as well, but I believe that Sengun can be one of the better centers in this league, one of the better young stars. You know, I think he's really in that place to really just become the face of the franchise. And I don't see them out of everybody. I don't see them moving him. And I don't see why that would even be the case unless Udoka just doesn't mess with him like that. But I don't think so. I think that's the furthest thing from the truth. They have one of the twins, if I'm not mistaken, in Thompson, and then just doing amazing things and what they've been able to contribute with Jalen Green and even what they almost had with Kevin Porter Jr. before he became a psycho. You know, there's a lot of storylines and a lot of things. You know, Fred VanVleet gets the payday he gets. They still have the number 3 overall pick tonight. I do imagine they try to move that number 3 overall pick for a superstar caliber player, just because of this draft class. If it's not Sarr, it's you know, it's lackluster, I guess, but you still have Donovan. You still have a bunch of, I mean, Donovan's 7'2" at that point. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. And this is a real 7-footer, not no Zach Edey bullshit. Let's get that out the way first.
I ain't gonna knock Zach Edey, but I get what you're saying.
Get what I'm saying?
He got a lot to prove.
He's got a bag.
From the college ranks to the NBA ranks where you can't just dominate like that. You know, but I will say this, if it was 1996, 2024, Zach Edey be the number 1 pick.
Man, if it was 2005, Zach Edey would be the number 1 pick. Like really, you know, it goes back not too long ago to when the big man was important as it was. I mean, look at Shaq and what he was able to do. But the thing with totally off topic, but Zach Edey in himself, man, I do not see a spurt of NBA athleticism in that man's body. I mean, this man does not have a bag. This man does not have any skill set other than I'm 7'4". And, you know, when you're going up against white boys at Purdue, that's perfectly fine. But when you're in the NBA and you're going up against Wemby and company, it's going to be a problem. So I'm curious to see how tonight goes for so many different teams. Obviously, you and I were just talking who I wished the Chicago Bulls took number 4 overall. Just not too long ago, Denny just got traded to the Portland Trail Blazers for the 14th overall pick. So obviously, a bunch of GMs all around the league feel like this might be a draft class that you're willing to skip out on. You know, we just saw what happened just the other night. New York Crossway Classic. I mean, you love to see it. I mean, it's Subway Classic going into it. Mikal Bridges. The Villanova Knicks. I sent you a text. Damn, like, what's going on over there? It's basically just Villanova. And the craziest part is of that clip going around of Stephen A. Smith, a diehard Knicks fan, saying way back in 2016 that none of these Villanova players have an NBA-ready prospect, which is crazy. Because they're all on his team now.
Yeah.
So where are you at right now? I know that was a whole wind of things, but with everything going on, OG just getting re-signed by the Knicks, obviously Mikal, obviously Denny, so many other things, the KD rumors. Where are you at tonight on the importance of this draft from an actual draft perspective? Do you think there's any game changers in this draft that could be franchise caliber players?
I think there's always one. The question is who? You know, it's not like it was last year where you had a Victor Wembanyama, a Scoot Henderson, a Brandon Miller, where you were able to have debates as to, okay, well, we know Victor Wembanyama is the number 1 overall pick, no matter who has the pick, but who would you take 2? Would you take Scoot or would you take Brandon Miller? Or, you know, what about Brandon Podziemski? You know, that he was the mystery kid out of Santa Clara and everything like that. You had guys that caught your eye a little bit more in last year's draft class. And I would even say in 2022 with like Paolo Banchero, Jabari Smith Jr. and the like. But this year, you got a lot of guys, you know, international guys like Alex Sarr, very talented. Zachary Ricochet, like that. He's a very talented player. Like it's several players in this draft class where you can kind of debate as to, is he a lottery pick or is he a top 5 pick? Is he a top 5 pick or could he potentially go number 1? I don't think this is a draft class where there's a clear-cut number 1. And usually when that happens, I think a lot of people from scouts to analysts, we tend to get lazy a little bit and say things, well, oh, this is a weak draft class. Yeah, it's a weak draft class, but if you're a scout, this is when to me, it becomes interesting.
No,
but it's like, well, okay, yeah, it's a weak draft class, but somebody in this class could potentially put a franchise on track for the next 10 to 12 years to be a viable player, not only in their respective conference, but potentially in the postseason on the brink of winning the championship. So you never know. But I'm not buying that. I think it's some talent in this draft class, and I'm eager to see exactly what direction not only the Atlanta Hawks go in with the number 1 overall pick, but what we're here to talk about tonight with the Chicago Bulls going with the number 11 pick. You know, do you trade up and seek to get a Donovan Cleveland? Do you trade down and seek to take the hometown kid, Terrence Shannon Jr., who I know very well, used to hoop with my cousins in Lincoln Park? So I'm very eager to see how teams approach this draft.
And I'm so happy you said that about Terrence, man, because to me, man, I mean, first of all, I want the apology to be just as loud as the accusation, because I mean,
100%.
Terrence deserves all the utmost respect for everything he went through, how he conducted himself, how U of I conducted themselves throughout the entire year. Northwestern could never. But that's a whole different conversation in itself. But you know, and those things were facts. But you know, man, I would love Terrence and Ayo on this team, and I think what they would be able to do together would be a lot of fun. But you hit it on the head. You know, there might not be a franchise caliber player going to a rebuilding team in this draft. But when you have the Atlanta Hawks, who have DeJounte Murray to this day, at this very point in time on June 26th, we'll see what happens tonight. You still have Trae Young. You still have Clint Capella. You still have all these boys over there. I mean, If Sarr goes there, if Klingon goes there, I mean, that's a totally different conversation of what you're walking into. You know what I mean? It's not like you are one of the worst teams in the league. This isn't going to the Detroit Pistons. This is going to a team that almost made the playoffs and was just in the Eastern Conference Finals just a couple years ago. Got dropped by 40 by Kobe White. I mean, you love to see it, but there's a lot of different storylines we could talk about. Shout out Kobe White, but even though those stats technically don't count, I still count them. That's his career high. Playoff game, Kobe White 40 ball. You love to see it. But getting into that, before we get into the draft itself, we're going to talk Zach LaVine drama. We're going to talk what might happen tonight. Will it be a full circle moment? He was traded on draft night just 8 years ago for Jimmy Butler, along with Lauri Markkanen and Chris Dunn. Now is he going to be traded for something else? Whatever that case may be. Number 3, who knows? I don't know what Houston's looking at. But I want to ask you about the guard room for the Chicago Bulls, because obviously I just got this. Gabe, I think you'll be proud of me. I think it was the best $30 I've ever spent on Fanatics. You can go on fanatics.com right now. Grab yours today. This is not a sponsorship. I'm just putting you on game. I grabbed this City Edition Alex Caruso Bulls jersey for a whopping $30 today. I think it was a great purchase. This is one of my favorite Bulls we've seen in quite some time. I still love his game, still love the kind of player he is, and I just wasn't willing to pay. 1, I think this is an ugly jersey, and 2, I just wasn't willing to pay $100-something for the one of the worst City editions in the league. But $30, not too bad, not too shabby, Mike. I will say that. So I'll have to tell my shorty that later, that my financial advisors they're gonna be very happy with me. But man, getting into that, Josh Giddey on the Chicago Bulls, 6'8", 21 years old. Outside of all the memes, outside of everything he had to go through throughout this season, this is still somebody who's a great facilitator, horrible three-point shooter, but we've seen how someone can change that so quickly. Lonzo Ball had one of the worst jumpers in all of basketball not too long ago, came into the Bulls organization shooting over 35%. So we can see how, one offseason can change a lot. How did you feel about the initial trade for Josh Giddey? I know we talked a little bit about it backstage. There's initial a sigh of relief because you understand what direction this team now wants to go into, but you still might feel some type of way because of the package we got in return. So how did you initially feel about Giddey coming to Chicago?
I don't mind the addition of Josh Giddey coming to the Bulls. Like you said, he's a valuable playmaker, a guy that could create shots and, distribute the basketball to others very well, a guy that plays well, a lot of pick and roll sets and whatnot. However, my issue with the trade between the Bulls and the Thunder was the fact that Arturas Karnisovas, Mark Eversley, and the Bulls brain trust in the front office didn't seek to get any draft capital back for a guy like Alex Caruso. And it made me wonder, did they wait too late to get Alex Caruso off the books, which in my opinion, I believe they did, because I was someone who was adamant about the Bulls shipping Alex Caruso prior to the conclusion of the trade deadline last season.
Best season he's ever had.
It was best season he ever had, for 1. 2, he's healthy. And with the contract that he's on and his value defensively to teams, he would be more beneficial being on a contender than being where he was asked to be here in Chicago. But because, you have an ownership group that's so content with trying to reach bottom line figures, and not only trying to reach bottom line figures, but make sure that they give the fans a watchable product, they're going to seek to not look toward the future and instead play the short game as opposed to long. So I don't mind the addition of Josh Giddey. It makes them younger. It gives them a guard that can run the floor alongside of Kobe White in the backcourt. However, now you have Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Dalen Terry.
Maybe can I ask you something really quick? Because I heard this from Giddey as well when they did his little introduction the other day. And before we get into that, I gave you that weird look. I promise it wasn't towards you. Someone on the TikTok said he's pretending to do an interview right now. If you want to check out Gabe's perspective, if you're watching this on the phone on TikTok, you can only see me. I get it. You can go on Give Us a Shot on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook right now. You can see Gabe's beautiful face. He's got the waves going today. I mean, he's got the beard flowing. He's doing it. So I promise you, I'm not just sitting here in silence for 3 minutes at a time, nodding my head like I'm just talking to myself. That'd be actually crazy. So Give Us a Shot Network. Check us out, Facebook, Facebook, YouTube. We're live right now. That's actually crazy that someone said that. But, my point in saying what I was about to say was Josh Giddey was asked a numerous amount of things, and we're going to get into all of that about at this point in my career. You're 21 years old. I don't even know what you're talking about. Coming off the bench is not that deep to me, but I guess that's not what you want to do at this point. That's fine. But the key word was when he talked about the guard room, he didn't mention Lonzo Ball. Now, obviously, Lonzo picked up his player option for this year, $20 million, a little bit above. For you, man, I mean, do you see them cutting him before we even get a chance to see Zoe hit the floor again? Because it seemed like Giddey mentioned every single person, including Dalen Terry, other than Lonzo Ball. So for me, the writing was on the walls that that's the reason they brought him into the Bulls organization. They want that long-term replacement, or at least they hope that he can be that. But I mean, Gabe, you've made us wait 3.5 years for this. I mean, it's been a long time in coming to try to see Lonzo in a Bulls uniform if he is ready, if he is going to be able to go like he said he is on opening night. If we're not even going to be able to see that, and we still have to pay him $20 million this year, do you see that being beneficial for the Bulls org?
No, I don't. I don't see it being beneficial for them to hold on to Lonzo for a long period of time, especially when he's on the final year of his contract, I believe, coming up this season. I think they owe it to themselves as well as Lonzo to see what he's looking like. But at the same time, if they're not 100% sure that Lonzo is going to be able to hit the floor on opening night, then they may have to seek to trade him for some assets to a team that might be willing to take a chance on him. When I look at a team, for example, like the Orlando Magic, that's a team that needs a guy like Lonzo Ball. Or I'm not going to say they necessarily need him, but he's a guy that could fit well in that system.
Right, a good facilitator.
He can shoot the 3 ball. He can play very well off of Jalen Suggs. I think if you put him beside Jalen Suggs in the backcourt over there, man, it's kind of like Pelican Bay South. Orange County, because it's locked down.
Right.
And then you got guys like Jonathan Isaac who could come in and off the bench and defend 1 through 5 and whatnot. A guy that I believe is the best defender in the league. That's a team that if they strike out on a KCP or Ant Simons, if the Portland Trail Blazers are willing to put him up for sale in a potential trade, that's a guy that I'm looking at. And I'm saying, hey, maybe we could take a flyer on him, especially when I have a guy like John Hammond in my front office, who was the man that drafted Giannis Antetokounmpo and is a big proponent of having long wings with size that can do an array of things on the floor on both sides of the basketball.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just thought it was an interesting comment, though, at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, you literally mentioned everybody outside of Zach and Lonzo, and I thought that was very interesting to me, to where it's like, I understand Zach's been at the 3 for quite some time when he is on the floor, but obviously, you missed to mention a couple important names there, and I thought it was an interesting conversation, especially with him. But the idea of him not coming off the bench at OKC, I understood it from his perspective, but in that same regard, you have spoken about it both from a baseball perspective and from a basketball perspective, that you got to show up every single day ready to work, or you're going to lose your job because there's somebody else that's willing to do it. Josh Giddey got outplayed, and his spot got outplayed in the playoffs on one of the brightest stages. The man couldn't hit water if he fell off a boat. I mean, couldn't knock down a shot, couldn't knock down a 3. Where are you at right now with the floor spacing of the Chicago Bulls and what you're expecting from Josh Giddey, not only as a facilitator, but as a scorer? Let's say, for the sake of argument, because there's a lot of people watching this right now saying, keep Zach, whatever. We're going to get into that next topic, promise. But with that being said, Zach's gone, assumingly, assuming maybe Vooch is here, maybe he's not. DeMar is likely out. What are you expecting from Josh Giddey as a scorer alongside guys like Ayo, who after the All-Star break was averaging 16 points per game, six assists, and then Kobe White, who was, in my opinion, the most improved player of the year?
When I look at what I'm expecting from Josh Giddey, I'm expecting an uptick in his stats or statistical production, rather. I mean, a guy that could at least average between 16 to 18 a night. A guy that could not only just average that, but possibly get around 6 rebounds a night and anywhere between 6 to 7 assists per game.
Mhm.
That's really what I'm expecting. I expect him to have the ball in his hands for a great chunk of the season, as long as he's able to stay healthy and play a full 82 game schedule, if not at least 3/4 of 82 games. So that's what I'm looking at when I look at Josh Giddey being inserted into the Bulls lineup, and I see him being a starter. And I think it's a reason why you didn't hear him mention guys like Zach LaVine's name or Lonzo Ball's name, because those are guys that could potentially be shipped out of town either tonight or in the coming days, if not
Right.
months,
Also guys who could take his job if they're not. You know what I mean? So I think it's
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely. Yeah.
competition part of it is like, yeah, no, I'm good, bro. Like I'm locked into that. But I'm excited about tonight, bro. I really am. And I think, we've definitely, not that me and you have talked a lot about the Giddey conversation tonight, but I think we're all over it. Like we got our expectations. We know what's going on. Gabe, let's get into it. Let's get it cracking, baby. Let's talk about what we got going on tonight. First, I want to start off with the tweet I know you saw, that the Chicago Bulls are one of the teams interested in trading for Kevin Durant. Gabe, please shut that down right away. We could just move on as soon as we get your take, because I don't have one. Gabe, what was your opinions when you saw that tweet?
The same as, we talked about earlier with the Houston Rockets. It's just two teams on two different pages. And in the case of the Bulls, right now, the way I see it, you in a lot of ways, you have to blow this thing up in order for it to get better. Unless if you're going to be willing to spend a boatload of money to bring in talent alongside of these guys, you're going to have to blow this thing up. And I don't see Kevin Durant wanting to come to Chicago under these circumstances. Now, if you had broke that report a couple years ago, like during the time when the Tokyo games were taking place, yeah, I could have bought that one. I definitely could have bought that one.
Zach were
Zach,
like this,
playing well and stuff. I could have bought that. But now, yeah, we've come a long way since those days, and a lot has changed. Kevin Durant was in a situation in Brooklyn at the time that was at first looking good and promising, and then it didn't. Once James left and Kyrie, and now he's in a situation in Phoenix where a lot of people, I think, are pressed to make some juicy reports in the wake of the Suns' first round exit at the hands of the Minnesota Timberwolves just a couple of months ago.
Of course. And, I think when you really look at it from that perspective, you also have to understand what you're giving up and what you gave up, what you're giving up. I think that's the key word there. Is you understand they gave away a Cam Johnson, a Mikal Bridges, several first round picks to acquire KD. So they're going to want that back. You know what Absolutely. I mean? They're going to want to not only get that kind of revenue back, but maybe even capitalize off of that because of KD's value now. And I think that's the big thing for me. Like, if you think in any way, shape, or form, not you, but the average fan thinks any way, shape, or form that you could just be like, yeah, we'll just do Zach LaVine and a couple firsts. They want Kobe. That Kobe's making $12 million a year, coming off a year where he went from 9 points per game to 19, showed that he could be one of the better players with the ball in his hand. That's exactly what Devin Booker could use right now. So for me, and that picks up on the 3-point shooting that they lacked, obviously, when guys like Grayson Allen went down, which it's fuck Grayson Allen on this network 24/7. But, at the end of the day, man, I'm excited to see what this team could potentially do outside of getting a guy like Kevin Durant. Lil Durk, the voice, shout out to him. I just got to link up with him the other day at the Sky game, which was a blessing. It was sick. Him and Vic Mensa were in town, and so many others. It was incredible. Saw his Instagram tweet, saw his Instagram story, I should say, of him recruiting LeBron James. That's awesome.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Not ready for it. This organization's not ready for it. Nah. This front office isn't ready for it. And I don't think we ever will be. So we might miss out on the LeBron era without it. If we missed out on it in 2012, 2013, we're definitely missing out on it in 2024, 2025. But, with that being said, man, it does lead to a more serious conversation, one you and I have been waiting for quite some time. Zach LaVine. DeMar DeRozan, rumors have stopped, and all of the speculation of them having ongoing conversations about the contracts. That seems like it's a done deal. If anything, it seems like a sign and trade once free agency officially kicks off, which is now, technically speaking, since we got everything bumping with OG. But Zach LaVine, obviously disgruntled, beating the hell out of PR people, doing everything he needed to do, had a fake knee surgery. No, I'm playing. Just a disgruntled Zach LaVine. There's rumors from Casey Johnson saying that they might try to patch the relationship, rehab the relationship was the exact words, to try to get him and Josh Giddey back together. Gave shot or no shot that Zach LaVine would entertain the idea of running it back. Instead of Lonzo, DeMar, and Vooch, this time it's Josh Giddey and Dalen Terry. Do you think there's any chance in the world that they could rehab this relationship at this point?
I would give it a puncher's chance, but in like when I look at the whole situation entirely, I highly doubt it that they'd be able to come to a resolution. Zach LaVine is at a point in his career where he's in his late 20s and he got what he wanted coming here, I think, for the most part.
The money.
He got a chance to show that he could be the man after being a guy that was really the number 3 option in Minnesota. And even though he didn't have like true team success with it, he had a lot of individual success. You know, to be able to get to back-to-back All-Star games in 21 and 22, find a way to, you know, parlay himself into being a member of Team USA, winning Olympic gold at the Tokyo Games and whatnot. He had that. And most importantly, he got his bag. And I think after he got his bag, which was on the, which was following the Bulls playoff run, I think he had an expectation of them like sustaining that, and they have not. And I don't think he can afford to wait around at this point of his career. I think Zach has come to the realization that I may not be cut out for like playing the face of the franchise role,
right?
But I can be a viable number 2 or number 3 option.
Yeah.
Besides, you know, a 2-headed monster, a 3-headed monster, I could be a valuable piece on a championship team. And I think that's what he wants to do. If not a championship team, at least a playoff team, a team that's well established and stacked up to make a run in either the West or Eastern Conference, respectively, depending on where the Bulls can seek to find a trade partner for his services.
Yeah, for sure. That's where I kind of disagree with you. I never felt like it had anything to do with the team's success. And we've seen it from James Harden. We've seen it from, I don't even need to go down a list of players who signed a max contract and then the following year or the next couple years requested a trade. You know, I think that's really just the name of the game. That's what it is. He's going to get the maximum of his, you know, highlights of what he is going to financially make in the NBA through this contract. If he was traded, it's a different conversation. They were able to give him that max slot. I think it was inevitable. I always kind of felt that way, especially after you can go back to, 2019, 2020, when the Sacramento Kings originally tried to sign him and he was on board.
As a restricted free agent.
Right. And he was down to leave.
They tried to sign him after the 17-18 season. I remember that very well because that was my first year covering the Rockets. And that was Jimmy Butler's first year in Minnesota. So I do
one of his last as well.
Yeah, because it was only a season and a quarter. Really, I don't even like to say a season and a half. It was really a season and a quarter because by Veterans Day of the 18-19 season, he was shipped off to Philadelphia.
Sure.
And I was kind of surprised by that because I had a lot of intel with people at the time that thought that Jimmy Butler was going to be seeking to get shipped off to Houston.
Right. And that was, that's that conversation we have all the time is like, we've seen these guys kind of like flirt with other teams. I mean, shit, Jimmy's doing it right now with the purple and gold, just trying to piss off Pat Riley at the Cam Brink comments. But I think at the end of the day, man, I always kind of got that vibe that Zach never, and I'm not saying Zach didn't like the city. I'm not saying Zach didn't like the fan base or the Bulls organization as a whole. I can't speak for him. Only he can. But I would say this, I never felt like Zach had an attachment to winning here. It never felt like he needed to win. Like it was like Giannis needed to win in Milwaukee. He wanted to do it here. He didn't want to leave anywhere else. We've seen this time and time again of players who love the organization that brought them in, gave them an opportunity and want to see that through. I think Zach's more in a place to where it's like, I just want to play good basketball. I want to get paid. And wherever that may be, that may be. I never really felt like it was like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to win a championship in Chicago. That was just me personally, how I felt about it.
I never got that vibe from Zach. I think Zach was thrusted into a spotlight here that he didn't ask for. You got to think this franchise was in a fucked up state.
Very.
If to keep it blunt.
To be real. And to that, before you say that, to that point, I just want to like address it because I think you made an amazing point right there. He wasn't even supposed to be the focal point of that trade package. It was Lauri Markkanen. And that was the biggest thing for me, where Zach was just kind of like, the nice little kick with that number 7 overall pick, which turned into Lauri. But I mean, to me, it always kind of felt like, this is going to be Lauri's team. Zach and Chris Dunn were going to be able to do their thing. And after Chris Dunn ate the bucket and chipped his tooth off on the floor, you never really saw him come back to the version of himself he wanted. And then Zach obviously takes over because Jim Boylan can't spell a big man to save his life.
See, I get what you're saying. I get why you say you would look at Lauri as the headliner. But when you're a veteran player,
sure,
which at the time I would say Zach was, because he was entering year 4, even though he was coming off of a torn ACL injury that he was rehabbing, because he didn't make his debut until like mid-season.
No, it was against I think it was I was there actually. I was there with a girl.
It was a mid-season debut because I remember because I remember it very well because his coming out party really as a Bull happened against Minnesota. Yep. It was a nationally televised game. So I remember that era very well in that time. But when you're a veteran, you kind of take on the responsibility of saying, you know what, I am the vocal point, the centerpiece of this deal. Right. I don't think a lot of people knew how good Zach LaVine was because of Karl Anthony Towns' greatness. His rookie season combined
Andrew
with
Wiggins still there.
Like he was playing alongside of 2 number 1 overall picks. So he had a little bit of leeway there. When he came here and he started playing well, coming off the ACL injury, everybody looked to him. Like when All-Star Weekend was here, even though he wasn't an All-Star that year, everybody looked at him. He was like the ambassador / player representative of the Chicago Bulls. So he automatically was thrusted into that spot. I think that the Bulls could have found a way to win with Zach LaVine. I just don't believe that the Bulls could have found a way to win with Zach LaVine as the best player,
right,
in the manner in which they were trying to. And I think when they brought in DeMar DeRozan, who was a hell of a free agency signing, I would say he's been the best free agency signing for the Chicago Bulls franchise since Paul Gasol. Paul Gasol 2014. Like if we going over the last 15 to 20 plus years, but like like once he came in, you had to ask yourself sometimes, well, who do you go to late in games?
Right.
You go to DeMar DeRozan for the shot, or do you go to Zach LaVine?
And to that point, DeMar did have that stretch in his first season with the Bulls. I mean, this was the king of the fourth quarter, so he was clutch. Yeah. It was New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, hit back-to-back game winners, and it kind of started that controversy, I felt like, internally between the two. I don't know if there was validity to that, but it kind of felt like beginning of that season, it was Zach's team. Immediately after New Year's, that's when we saw DeMar start to kick it up and become who he was, which, to your point about Caruso earlier, is when I felt like that's when you trade DeMar DeRozan. You know what I mean? That's when you finally make that happen. And I understand you can't when you're winning. Looking back in hindsight, it's like that's when you were going to get the max value for DeMar. That was probably the best basketball he ever played. But to that point, you brought in 2 number 2s, is how I truly looked at it. Maybe even 1, 2, and a 3. I think Zach might be a number 3 on a championship caliber team, depending on the situation. If you're with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, you're the number 3. That doesn't slight you. It just means the 2 guys ahead of you are dogs. AD and Bron. Zach's the 3. But with that, DeMar, there's a reason DeMar got shipped off for Kawhi Leonard. And it's because not that he was not good enough to win a championship, but he wasn't that guy that was going to take them over the hump. Kyle Lowry wasn't that guy. Fred VanVleet wasn't that guy. A bunch of 2s and 3s. You needed that 1A to be able to help you win a championship. And at that time, that was Kawhi. So I think Bulls fans initially, Lonzo Ball, big name. Vooch, big name. LaVine, big name. Got all these guys. DeMar DeRozan, that's great. But we never really truly had a number 1. Even as much as I love Kobe and his ascendance, I don't think, and I think it's unfair for anybody to put that expectation on Kobe White to be the number 1 on a championship caliber team if they think the face of the franchise for the foreseeable future is Kobe White. At this point in time today, and obviously that can continue to change. The man shot 50% from 3 all of December and January. So I'm not putting him in a box. I'm just saying I don't think we've had that guy since Jimmy Butler. And that's been one of the biggest problems for the Bulls. Before we get out of here, obviously, there's not too much Gabe and I are going to talk about right now. It's all just, our opinions, what we want to see happen for the Chicago Bulls organization. If Zach LaVine is traded tonight, Gabe, I'm going to start with you. Where's he going? And what do you think the return looks like?
if he's traded tonight, I would say the team that sought to get him when he was a restricted free agent and had him sign an offer sheet, the Sacramento Kings. And I would assume that it would be for Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter, the reported package that I think a lot of us have been hearing, and alongside of some draft pick compensation. That's really what I would think it would be, but it would still leave me perplexed if I was someone, as I know people that listen to you, Mike, as Bulls fan, it would leave me perplexed a little bit if I was a Bulls fan, because when I see things like that, it makes me wonder, what direction are you trying to go?
Right.
Because this team has to get younger, but all in all, I see the Sacramento Kings, and the dark horse might be the Dallas Mavericks, but if I had to put a bet on it,
I better get Derek Lively there, Gabe. I ain't gonna lie to you.
No, you're not getting Derek Lively.
I better get if I get PJ Washington, I'm mad as fuck.
Yeah, you're not getting PJ Washington either, but you're not getting PJ Washington.
Derek Lively. I'm getting, bro. Like,
you gonna get Jay Hardy. That's who you gonna get.
Oh man.
Yeah. That would probably you would probably get a couple young players, maybe. But you would be traded for draft compensation.
Right. See, for me, man, and I'm with you. I think Sacramento is a legitimate option, but something I've peeped in my gut and my intuition has just told me, which have definitely led me in the wrong direction before. I'm not gonna act like I know all, see y'all. I don't got a third eye under this hat, but. I think if Zach LaVine is traded at some point tonight, he is in an Orlando Magic jersey tomorrow. And that's just truly how I feel about it. They have the 18th overall pick. I've been seeing him on Instagram with Paolo Banchero every single day. It feels like they're posting each other. They've been working out with each other since the Bulls season ended and he was healthy enough to work out. And funnily enough, Gabe, if you go on his Instagram this morning, he posts a picture of him working out with Paolo Banchero. There's a reason for that, and I believe that it's going to be because the Orlando Magic are going to try to make a move. Klay Thompson being the obvious big headline for the Orlando Magic this offseason doesn't do enough for me. I think they get a young player, a decently young and experienced player in Zach LaVine. You have a guy who's been to the playoffs before. Not much success, but it's more success than anybody else in that room has had outside of Markelle Fultz. And I think that's probably the package. I think you get a Markelle Fultz or somebody along those lines and the 18th overall pick. And I think the Bulls just bite the bullet to try to, same way we saw with the 76ers organization. They didn't care what they got from the Clippers. They just wanted to get James Harden off the books. Now they have a max slot open in free agency. They can get Bron. They can get DeMar. They can get whoever they want. And I think that might be what the plan is right now. Tank for Cooper Kupp is obviously, or Cooper Flag, pardon me. Wrong white boy. Tank for Cooper Flag. Obviously, you're going to have a max slot opened up for next year. Even if you get rid of DeMar, who walks as well, that's 2 max slots. Bulls could walk into the summer of 2025 and get 2 max slot contracts. I think that's the better way for us to go, whether it's Sacramento or not. As long as they're 1-year deals, I am completely content with that. If it's a 3-year deal of a 27-year-old who wasn't the shit when he was on his previous team and isn't the shit now, I'm probably pissed off about it. So I think Orlando might be one of those sneaky teams we see. Houston at number 3. Because of the rumors, I think there's a conversation that if, obviously they can't grab KD, they can't grab Jimmy, they can't grab any of these big names. If they're that desperate to add another star, they definitely could do it. And I think they have young pieces that they're willing to move. But for number 3 overall, you would have to, it would be a very bad decision for myself personally, to co-sign that for the Rockets organization. I don't think they would do it. Yeah. But again, to that point, how desperate are you? Because to your point, Gabe, they gave Fred VanVleet that fat ass contract. How desperate are you to get big time players back in Houston?
But in the Rockets' defense, when they gave Fred VanVleet that money, I don't think a lot of people, and I'm not saying you don't, but right. I don't think a lot of people, unless if you watch basketball on a night-to-night basis, really understood how bad the Rockets were looking under Steven Silas.
For sure.
They needed some veteran leadership in that locker room. I think that's why they brought a guy like Fred VanVleet in, and they overpaid to get him. But it was a move that worked, because when you combine what he has with on-court experience, combined with off-the-court experience, you need veterans.
Right.
And he's been there at the highest levels. And I think he was a godsend for that team. I don't think they're that desperate to get a star as much as some people may want them to. I do know that they were very interested in Mikal Bridges. That I know for a fact. However, as we know, he's a New York Knick now.
Way too many picks. Way too many picks for Mikal.
Unless if a team, and this isn't gonna happen, but just like throwing hypotheticals out there. Unless if Jaylen Brown was being put on the market, I don't think that the Rockets are gonna trade that number 3 overall.
And that's what it comes down to, man, is how desperate are you? You know what I mean? We've seen it before. Organizations make moves where you're like, I don't think you needed to do that, but I could also understand with the inexperience outside of Fred VanVleet, there's not a lot of veterans on this team. It's a lot of young cats. If you think Kevin Durant's that guy, I could buy that. I could buy into that. You could sell me Jimmy Butler 100%. Zach LaVine, it is a Rockets move. I will say that it is a Houston Rockets organization move, but this is a whole new front office. This is a whole new understanding of what this org can be.
Get Jalen Green back. I say that much,
man, and that's another problem if you bring in a guy like Zach. You know what I mean? I think it starts problems. But last question, number 11 overall. I'd love your opinion on it because you could tell who's followed the mock drafts and who hasn't. I heard some people think Matthews is going number 11 overall. That man is going in the top 5. You're crazy. Like this,
he might go number 3 to Houston.
He might. And
I know some Rockets fans that like his game and would love to have him in Houston. I don't see him lasting that long.
No.
But back to your point, who goes number 11 for the Bulls? I think they have several options. I think if they want to play the safe choice, you go with Devin Carter out of Providence, a guy that could replace Alex Caruso with his skill set, being a high impact energy defender on the perimeter and defensive end, as well as a guy that can make plays out the pick and roll and has really worked on refining his jumper and had a hell of a year in the Big East last year for the Friars. Or if you want to go for what I would like to see them do and go for the guy with the high upside, you could go for a guy like Ron Holland, who was a member of the G League Ignite program, averaged 25 and 5 in the G League. Yeah, his jump shot is questionable, but I know that he's working on that, refining his three-point stroke and the like. But you put him beside Josh Giddey and Kobe White, he's a guy that's going to be able to make some things happen in transition, and he's a guy that can defend multiple positions. And when you bring in a guy like Josh Giddey, who we know his defense leaves a lot to be desired, you're going to need some guys behind him when he gets beat on drives and penetration inside the lane to, swat that stuff out. And Ron Holland is one of those guys, he can cover a lot of ground. You talk about a guy that's like 6'8", 6'9". If the Memphis Grizzlies don't select him with the number 9 overall pick, that's a guy that you could take. Or potentially you could trade down, as I said earlier, and go after a guy like Terrence Shannon Jr. Sure, I know a lot of his questions are taking place right now in regards to him being an older prospect, but he's a guy that gets downhill unlike any other. Has a lot of Donovan Mitchell in his game, can make things happen out the pick and roll. His jumper, it could be a little fluky sometimes with his release, but he gets it off and he's refined it and he's worked at it. He's gone from a guy that had a lot of questions about his shooting to now he's one of the best shooters in his draft class, I would say. At least the catch and shoot situations. And we saw what he did as a member of the Fighting Illini, leading Brad Underwood's program to the Elite Eight down in Champaign last year. So those are the top 3 guys that I could see. The mystery guy, the guy that I'm intrigued by, if they want to go with a big man, is Khalil Ware out of Indiana. I really like his game. I think he provides them with a lot of athleticism that they have not had at the 5 spot in quite some time. Rim protector, and he can stretch the floor with the ability to pick and pop, as well as, play off of Josh Giddey or Kobe White in a pick and roll.
No, I'm with you. And just to keep mine short, because I think you hit it perfectly on the head. Those are my 2 options as well. I think Ron Holland is one of those guys that this Bulls organization desperately needs, legitimate scorers. And I believe it's Knight. He's from Tennessee.
Knight.
Yeah, there's so many ways I've heard this man's name. I think that's where Memphis goes at number 9. Or at number 8, I think that's definitely where I would see them for fit. I think they definitely need shooting alongside John Moran, Desmond Bane and company. Got Jaren Jackson Jr. Could also see them going, potentially, another big, because they just lost Steven Adams, obviously, to the Rockets. Xavier Tillman wasn't exactly what they wanted him to be in that time. They definitely do need another big man in the building, because I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is better at that 4 spot. But with that being said, I think Ron Holland is the perfect fit for the Chicago Bulls tonight if they do that. And to your point, if it's not him or another kind of athletic, shifty guard that we could potentially see them hopefully develop, just in case maybe you want to put a guy like Josh Giddey at the 3, a facilitator who knows how to handle the ball. Maybe he figures out his 3-point shot, and then boom, then you got something cooking there. For me, I think Terrence Shannon Jr. is a perfect example of just what Arturas has been able to do in the later rounds. This guy, I mean, let's be real. Patrick Williams, horrible decision. It was a horrible decision then. It's a horrible decision now. When the later rounds, finding the Dalen Terrys, the Ayo Dosumus, the Marcos Simonoviches, I think he's done a decent job at finding guys who understand their role. And that's exactly what Terrence Shannon Jr. could potentially be for the Bulls. But we'll find out. Draft about to kick off. I'm a little lackluster for words today. Been talking too much, talking NBA ball. Gabe, we appreciate you being here, man. Can you really quickly just tell everybody where they can find you?
For sure. You can find me at What Gabe Said on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days. You can also find me at Gabe Pix, that is Pix, on Instagram. I'm all over, but I'm always on Twitter, always conversating, and congregate with people on the game. Baseball, basketball, football, you name it. We talk about everything, pop culture.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you having me on, Mike.
Gabe, appreciate you being here, man. Again, if you guys want to check us out, you could always follow us at Give Us a Shot Network. Link in the bio below. Don't be lazy. It takes 1 second to find so many more amazing and intelligent individuals than myself. That's why I bring Gabe on here, to let you know the X's and O's. I'm just giving horrible opinions. But with that being said, first, really want to say before we get out of here, we hit 31,000 followers today on the Shy Kid TikTok. Appreciate everybody who's been a part of the journey thus far. Man, and the only people I can give this credit to is the women we've been covering over the last 3 years. The WNBA content has been absolutely incredible, absolutely insane. So I appreciate everybody from top to bottom who's ever been a part of the journey, who's been here from the beginning, or if you're new, make sure you give us a like, give us a follow, hit that follow button. Make sure you check out Gabe, because like I said, the man's a dog. The man's a walking bucket. He does this. That headband is strong. But until then, man, appreciate y'all being here. Peace.